and the title is Sustainable Development and Modes of Land Use, Reconciliation of Different Land Users' Interests. And without further ado, I would like to invite the chair of the session, my good old friend, Dr. Seija Tuulentie, to come to the stage and lead the show. Please, Seija, welcome.
Okay, thank you, Markku, and welcome all, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very interesting topic, and I think the earlier session today touched upon it somehow. Many of the issues that we are going to hopefully go into more concrete things and into concrete actions that are performed here in the Arctic. And we surely will get some picture of the different situations around the Arctic. We have representatives in this panel from North America and Finland, and they represent several fields of land use, from mining to forestry and reindeer herding. We don't have any tourism expert, but I have worked as a tourism researcher in Natural Resources Institute Finland, so I hope to put some effort on tourism and recreation as well. And I hope that we will have, since this is a question of reconciliation, and dialogue is very important, so I hope that we will have time for dialogue in this session. And of course, mining issues have been quite hot debated lately, and that's really nice that we have two or three mining experts. So I want to invite here Hannele Pokka, who is Permanent Secretary of Ministry of the Environment, Chair of Finnish Network for Sustainable Mining. So some mining related issues, I suppose, in her speech as well. Then Michel Julien, Vice President Environment, Agnico Eagle Mines, which have mine in Finland and in Canada and also in Southern Hemisphere. And then Ollila, Executive Director, Reindeer Herders Association Finland, representing the old traditional mode of land use. Pamela, researcher, Arctic Center at the University of Lapland, has been doing research on mining as well, and other land use modes, and especially on the social license to operate. And Kirsi-Maria Korhonen represents Metsähallitus. She is regional director here in Rovaniemi and in Lapland. So please welcome. And take the seats. And Hannele Pokka can come here and start with her speech, if you wish.
Hi. Hi. We saw yesterday.
I'd like to sit here, yeah.
So good morning everybody. Nice to see you also today here in Lappia House. I grew up here in Rovaniemi in a small village 20 kilometers down the river, Kemijoki, and I remember when the whole my childhood, 1960s, I heard that the local people in my village, my parents and others, they were so disappointed and unsatisfied the way how the hydropower plant has constructed in the river. The whole river was taken to produce electricity to Finland, and if I remember now what happens, then I can say, using these modern words, there was reconciliation not at all, and people and the whole country lost one of the European richest salmon river, but it's another story. Well, I am an old lady. I can tell you a little about history. When I was serving as a governor here in Lapland in the end of 1990s and then the beginning of 2000, we had quite quite hard conflict between forest companies and reindeer management, reindeer associations located in Sami home region in the northern part of Lapland. And after that, especially the state forest service started quite active dialogue process, and I think that Kirsi-Maria Korhonen will tell more about that, so I don't continue that. And the last 9 years I have been working in the Minister of Environment, and all these years almost we have been talking about mining activities and the environmental impacts which mining has caused. And the whole story started as, or quite many of you remember, that there was one leak in one mining in the northern Finland, and after that 2013 government adopted action plan for sustainable mining in Finland. But as you know, if somebody accepts action plan, it's one story, and the other story is who will implement it. And what I want to tell you is that after that in Finland started quite special activity between various stakeholders, environmental organizations, reindeer associations, Sami parliament, and the mining industry itself, to how to create criteria and standards that the mining activities could be in Finland sustainable. So sustainable in socially, economically and environmentally. The beginner of this project was Finnish independent fund, Sitra, but now I have been chairing this body, this network, the last 2 years. And the purpose was that all mines in Finland, operating in Finland, could accept criteria and indicators from the first beginning when the mining starts or prospecting begins in Finland to the end when the situation is that the mine will be closed, that all operations should be and could be sustainable. This is quite large work, and it has not been very easy, but everybody who has been sitting in this network is still thinking, we had the meeting in the morning, is still thinking that this is worthwhile to be with this. One part of this criteria and indicators is in a way a sort of toolbox to prospectors and mining companies. What should they do when they come first time to the region, so that they could get this social license to operate? And the other part is how to operate when the mining has been opened, and then the last is how to do closing it. Now we are back in this training phase and pilot phase, and I can say now that almost all big mining companies operating in Finland has decided to take this in use. Quite soon we will get the first reports from mines and see what is really the situation in terms of sustainability in mines in Finland. To put in briefly, in terms of sustainability of mining, you get higher ratings when you go beyond what is required by law. So we are waiting to see that our mines want to be good citizens in this way. And we know that in Canada there is a little similar system. We learned also that. But the Finnish special point is that this system is for one mine, not the company which headquarters could be in the foreign countries. So this is now the situation where we are living, and I stop now my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I think we go deeper into the comparison between Finland and Canada in regard to mining. So, Mr. Julien, please.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. I'll try to be brief. Essentially, Finland is 100 years old. Canada is 150, and Agnico is 60 years old. We celebrated our anniversary last week, so it's not insignificant, and we're very proud of that. And the company started in Abitibi in Quebec, and we had this ore body, La Ronde mine, which we were mining at over 3.2 kilometer deep. So, and for us, it's still an important ore body. But in the early 2000, we decided to go north. Okay. We decided to develop two new platforms, one in Nunavut and one in Finland. So all the companies were going south, and we decided to go north. Some financial analysts on Bay Street, wearing suspenders, they were very skeptical, to say the least. And it turned out to be a very good move for us. Actually, right now in Nunavut, we have one operating mine, and we're developing two. So I just want to talk about some specificity related to our Nunavut operation. So this on the left is our operation in Lapland and Kittilä. It's really like an environment like you're very familiar with. But on the right, it's our Meadowbank operation. It's really a topography dominated by lakes. There's water everywhere, so you have to deal with that. And in terms of distance, like Meadowbank is located really in the heart of Nunavut, and we have this base in Val d'Or. So it's 2,000 kilometers. To develop Meadowbank, we had to build all the infrastructures because there's nothing there. We had to build access road, over 110 kilometers road, be self-sufficient in terms of energy and everything, which is totally different from the Finland operation. So what's interesting, and this kind of relate to the topic today, is the big mindset change that we had to go through as a company and also as an industry is this idea that we're operating on a land that belongs to somebody else, okay? And this is quite new in the industry. And in Nunavut, we're actually operating on what we call IOL, Inuit-owned land, okay? And when the Nunavut was created in 1999, which was the largest land claim agreement in Canada, over 18% of the land was given by the federal government to the Inuit organization, and also some subsurface right as well. So if we have claims or mining claims on Inuit-owned land, we have to negotiate with these Inuit organizations, and that's what we've been doing since we started. This is a nutshell, a bit the process to get a project going in Nunavut. And when the Nunavut was created in 1999, there were discussions in 1993. There were three main bodies that were created by the federal government. There was the Nunavut Planning Commission. This is managed by the Nunavut government. Nunavut Planning Commission, the Nunavut Impact Review Board, and the Nunavut Water Board. Okay, so when we develop a project, we have to go through this process, and discuss with these different, or present our project through these different Nunavut organization. But the key thing, and this is what I wanted to really highlight, is that in order to go through this process and to be successful, and at the end of the day get your type A water license that allows you to basically operate and manage water, and you need to have these, what we call Inuit Impact Benefit Agreement, IIBA, which is basically an agreement with the communities, that neighboring communities, or actually we go through the Inuit organization, and we need to come up with a series of agreement. So these are very fundamental, and they serve as the basis of the foundation on which we develop the relationship, and then we go from there, and these things are periodically updated. But so far we're very proud of the success we've had through this process, and I think this has opened essentially for us and for other companies Nunavut as a region for mining development. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you, Michelle. It's really interesting to compare, and I think the situations are so different in Nunavut and in Finland that we may have some discussion on the role of local communities, for example, which must be very different as well. And now we have a speech by Pamela Lesser, who is researcher at the Arctic Center, but I suppose she presents some other connections of herself as well.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Seija. Yes, and actually, Michelle, your presentation was terrific and dovetails nicely with what I'm going to talk about, which is land use around the Arctic, but focusing more on reconciliation measures and the differences between the Nordics and North America, and ending with a brief note on history and what we can learn from the Vikings. All in 7 minutes or less. So when we talk about land use in the Arctic, it's actually very similar, whether it's tourism, traditional livelihoods, it can be reindeer herding, whaling, forestry, extractive industries, nature protection. They tend to be similar, and this is because the Arctic is characterized by small-scale rural communities that have mono-industries, one dominant industry. And there are dangers in this because these can be subject to boom and bust cycles. And while there's clearly an awareness of the need to diversify economically, given the sparseness of the population, which you can see on this map, the red indicates urban, denser areas, and the Arctic is extremely sparse. So given that, the distances and lack of infrastructure, it's very hard to diversify. I have land use conflicts here, but since we're going to talk about them more specifically later, I think I'm going to skip this and actually move on to reconciliation measures. These differ. So Nordic countries traditionally have been command and control economies. Government controls land use. Private sectors had nominal influence up until the mid-1990s when the Nordics opened up for foreign direct investment. Foreign companies came in with different ways of operating. When we talk about reconciliation in the Nordics, it is a blend between government, legislation, regulatory measures, and the private sector, and voluntary measures. And those can be everything from developing better technologies or better stakeholder engagement strategies. And these voluntary measures in the Nordics have adopted this global term of social license to operate. Social license to operate does not look the same everywhere. So if we move to North America, we see there's a different land ownership structure. There's a different governance structure in the North American Arctic. And this has given rise to social license to operate looking quite differently. So in terms of land ownership, this really dates all the way back to the 1970s, early 70s, when both the Canadian and US government were involved in land use claims. And Michelle mentioned this about Nunavut briefly. So the Canadian government gave these 3 northern territories over to governance of the Indigenous peoples there. the U.S. government gave land, but even more importantly, money to indigenous peoples in Alaska. The money was used to set up 13 native regional corporations. Today, some of these corporations are major economic players, and the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, which is not the largest, is worth over $2.1 billion. So these are serious entities. Private sector's always had a much longer history in North America, too. When we talk about reconciliation measures in North America, those tend to be dominated by private sector, and they look like private governance agreements or arrangements. And it's a relationship between company and community. Both parties have mutual responsibilities, codified in a contract, usually called an impact and benefit agreement, defensible in a court of law. Totally different beast than in the Nordics. Now, SLO, social license to operate, looks different between the Nordics and North America. It also looks different between the Nordics. Suomi is a research project done here at the university. I didn't work on this, but Timo led it. And it found that in Norway, the term social license to operate was not used. The concept of having to go beyond what was required, beyond legislation, also didn't exist. Sweden, social license to operate rarely was used. When it was the same as corporate social responsibility. And corporate social responsibility and SLO are different. Corporate social responsibility is more about a company's internal regulation of its external behavior. SLO is much more about community engagement and even co-management of resources. Finland was the exception. Both term and concept were used widely by government, by industry, not by local villagers. So when we talk about the need for reconciliation, if the people who are supposed to issue the social license to operate are not aware of the term or the concept, perhaps this is at least one place where we can begin. And to wrap up, about the Vikings. There's a really interesting article in the International New York Times at the end of October, and it made me think about the connection between history and land use. Southern Iceland, barren, no trees, terrible soil erosion problems. Why? Over 1,000 years ago, when the Vikings settled Iceland, they cut down all the trees. Trees covered 1/4 of the land area of Iceland. Since the turn of the century, 1900s, there's been a concerted effort to reforest Iceland with very, very nominal success. So, coming back to the theme of this overall conference and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, while it's crucial, clearly, to look to the future, I think it's also very important to look to the past, and sometimes even to the distant past. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. I think that this social license to operate is a very interesting concept, and I'm sure we'll come back to that later. But now we go on with the opening speech by Kirsi-Maria Korhonen from Metsähallitus. Please.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Metsähallitus is a state enterprise managing state-owned lands and waters in Finland, and in Lapland this means 60% of the land area. Half of this is statutory protection and wilderness areas, and 28% of this is areas which are in multiple forestry use. And my presentation is about the reconciliation in these multiple use forests. As a manager of state land, we have worked hard since 1990s to develop practical public participation methods which provide the local people the possibilities to influence their living surroundings, and especially taking into account the traditional uses of land. Main tool is our natural resource plan, which also includes the landscape ecological plans. It's about combining the various uses of state lands. It's a holistic and multi-targeted plan, and the planning process is inclusive. Natural resource plans are made together with a regional cooperation group. Interest groups nominate their representatives to this group, and they take part in all of the planning process. And we have the independent chairperson always in this. As a result of these plans, we get land use guidelines, targets and action plans for 5 years for state lands. And these include also the limits for the forestry operations, the maximum allowable cut. During this process, we also use other public participation methods, such as the open internet maps, where anyone can mark sites important to their life, and we go through all of these markings later on and figure out if we need to do something about them. All Metsähallitus forests are managed as multiple-use forests, and this is because, especially here in Lapland, there is great amount of other livelihoods which are dependent on the same forest: tourism, reindeer herding, berry industry, and of course all the local people's everyday life is very much connected to the forests. We have lots of tourism and recreation possibilities in these forests, and the tourist companies who use the areas have written agreements of use. We need to develop the forestry methods which combine recreational use, scenic values, wilderness values, and productive forestry, and of course biodiversity. And one of the things we have developed is different continuous cover forestry methods, but also many other things. In important touristic regions, we have cooperation groups where touristic companies and villages have their representatives, and we always in beforehand present all logging plans to these groups, and they have possibility to influence them, and we can make changes to plans accordingly. Reindeer husbandry is a traditional livelihood in northern Finland, besides the tundra areas also in forests. And of the productive forestry areas of Metsähallitus, 71% belongs to the reindeer herding area and 9% to the Sami homeland region. And the strongest effort to reconciliation we always have with reindeer husbandry. There is a legislation behind the need to negotiate, but we have made an agreement, Metsähallitus and the Reindeer Herders Association, where we define the methods of cooperation. And the main point is that every logging plan, every soil preparation plan, road construction, etc., we sent the plan in beforehand to the reindeer cooperative, and they have the possibility to negotiate, and we try to achieve a common view of how to make the loggings, and often get to certain set-aside areas and logging restrictions too. %90 of the Sami region up north in northern Lapland is national parks, wilderness areas and other set-aside areas. But forestry area covers almost 10%, which means 500,000 hectares. And we need to be aware of all the needs of traditional livelihoods very effectively there. We have regular negotiations between Sami Parliament and Metsähallitus concerning all major land use issues. And as a solution of earlier forest disputes, which already were mentioned here, we negotiated agreements of set aside important reindeer pasturelands for 10 to 20 years. And this happened in 2009, and since that we have not done any such loggings in the Sami area, which the reindeer cooperative opposed in beforehand. Metsähallitus, Sami Parliament, Skotsami village meeting and the Sami area reindeer herding cooperatives have also accepted an agreement of the mutual cooperation and forestry restrictions in order to safeguard Sami culture and reindeer herding. And Metsähallitus and Sami Parliament have also developed practical guidelines how to implement AquaCon principles of Biodiversity Convention 8J to ensure the indigenous Sami culture. As a separate AquaCon group is nominated by Sami Parliament to all major land use planning process. Wide stakeholder groups are the base for the adaptive planning, and we need to have all interest groups to be able to take part in these. But besides this, the Sami indigenous rights need special attention, and we use the AquaCon groups in that. But always when we have ended up to some type of conflict or conflicting issues, we need to have the separate stakeholder dialogue or with those whose interest it is. I mean, real local interest groups, for instance, the reindeer herders and Metsähallitus need to negotiate in beforehand to go to the wider group, because always when there is a conflict, many others want to take part too, and they usually only cause more disturbance than help to solve the problems. But always everyday cooperation in the forestry and land use planning is the basis for the trust, and this trust is needed in every process. Sometimes it takes a long time to reach it, and sometimes even though there was a trust, even a small thing might shake it, and you have to start from beginning again. But it's important always to get the trust. You have to hear what the issues important to the other parties are, and try to find the solutions to exactly to those. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsi-Maria. It's interesting, this point you raised up, this question of trust. I think it's the crucial word in all this reconciliation. And I know that you have really long history in this stakeholder involvement and processes, so we'll come back to that. But now we have the last opening speech by Anne Ollila from Reindeer Herders Association. She has promised to challenge us and be critical, so we are really looking forward.
Okay. Hello everyone. So my point of view is reindeer herding, and the context is here in Lapland, Finland, and I'm afraid I must be rather critical, but don't misinterpret me to be ungrateful. I do appreciate the work and efforts you have been doing with this reconciliation theme. So, as you already know, reindeer herding is based on the history and culture of this area. The history that is much older than the history of Finland is. As free-ranging animals, reindeer need a lot of space. The fragmentation of pastures is by far the greatest of all threats challenging our future. The one and only solution so far which has been offered to us is reconciliation. It is a beautiful idea, but its fundamentally skewed. The uncontested starting point is that we need more and more industrial land use, which is nowadays often called also bioeconomy. Everything else around here, the livelihoods and cultures, just needs to adapt to this primary need. This is why we must ask what reconciliation really is. It seems to be a magic word of all political speeches and papers. Whenever there is a new project beginning, problems are swept away by reconciliation, so everyone can be very happy. It's a political word with poor, proper practical implications. Today I will give you 3 examples of this, chose to fit with these participants of this panel. First, the case of state forestry. The largest land user in our lands is the state forestry enterprise. We have searched coping mechanisms and tried to adapt to the heavy forestry for decades. We have written contracts, how to cooperate, and what are the issues to be negotiated to be able to act in the same forests. However, we have absolutely nothing to say of the amounts of cut down trees. We also hear "oops, sorry" every year when they have done things we have together agreed not to be done. Still, this is called reconciliation. Second, the Agnico Eagle gold mine in Kittilä. I give credit from the bottom of my heart to the company for their communication skills and wills. But is communication reconciliation? That some harmful impacts are compensated? That we don't really have nothing to say in whether or not a mine will come and change fundamentally our grounds? We don't have say in the monumental risks that come alongside the mining industry, risks that could destroy us. Is it reconciliation when we do not choose the risks, but we have to live with them? The final example hits the Ministry of Environment. One of the main institutional reconciliation tools we have in this country is the land use planning. The ministry is right now updating the national land use guidelines. The new ones will be implemented from the beginning of next year. However, the ministry has simply wet reindeer out from these guidelines. So with this latest reconciliation, we can expect to be left out even more in concrete land use projects. For centuries, reindeer herding has been the one to step aside, change practices, and adapt to other land users. As the result, reindeer pastures are fragmented and grazing pressure on the remaining land areas has grown. The offered reconciliation measure is to cut down the number of reindeer. Surprised? We have worked a lot in many kinds of reconciliation projects. During these, it has started to feel that we are handled by the very same strategy the parents use with a child who is in a difficult age. To keep us calm and quiet, we are asked very nicely and kindly to choose what kind of damage we prefer in our reindeer lands. to choose if the gate to the mine should be in the left or the right side of the road, to choose if we prefer this forest to be cut down instead of another one. If we behave badly by disagreeing, we are blamed to be ungrateful and selfish. We will be reminded that we should be grateful we still have some special rights. We will be reminded that we also use the products mining industry is producing, and if they cannot mine our lands, they will mine using children and slaves in Africa. For us, this is the current reality of reconciliation in Finland. So, what is needed? We need to assess the cumulating impacts of other land use on reindeer lands and to take these assessments seriously. We need not only to minimize the harmful and negative impacts, we need to prevent them. We do need reconciliation as a real thing, not as a hiding tool for decision makers. We need you to understand that we cannot simply step aside forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. That was something that you promised to speak about, and we trusted in that. So it was actually your speech touched upon same issue that I was going to raise in this discussion, which we are now starting, about these cumulative effects, because I think maybe it's especially the question regarding reindeer herding, but also other issues. We have these environmental impact assessments and so on, but how to look at the different things happening at the same time in the same area. And that has been discussed more and more, I think also in Canada and as well as in Finland. But there were kind of straight questions or comments to some of you. So maybe we could go around so that Kirsi-Maria is first to comment what was said about her field, and then Agnico Eagle, and then Ministry of Environment. And then Pamela, I think, could give a general comment on this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's a little bit difficult to answer if the idea was that reindeer herders should have the say on the total amount of logging in state lands. The state logging volumes are defined in the natural resource plans where all the stakeholders are involved, but we have made agreements with reindeer cooperatives of certain areas set aside, and also they have been taken into account to our logging volumes too. So it's not so that we just set this aside and then log here more, and that's not what happens. Maybe that at this time we continue negotiating.
What would you say about cumulative impacts, because these are multiple use forests and there is tourism and there is reindeer herding, logging, everything, mining, yes, in the same areas?
Each of them influence in each other. Reindeer herding has influences in forestry. Forestry has influences in tourism and reindeer herding, and it's all about how to have this working so that everyone can manage in same areas. We cannot, in our livelihoods, we cannot just put this area for reindeer herding and this for tourism and this for forestry, but we have to manage the forest so that reindeer herding and tourism can survive there too at the same time.
Okay, thanks. And Michelle?
Yeah, so I really like what you said, this powerful question you raised, Anne. Is communication reconciliation? I thought that was a very, very good question. Obviously, reconciliation is something that is national. It's to engage all the country and everything. And I can just give you the Canadian perspective. Like, I'm from Canada, and this is very important for us. It's a very fundamental issue in Canada. Actually, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is talking a lot about this and the need we have to collectively march toward this goal. And it's not an easy conversation. Actually, it's extremely difficult. And sometimes people may trigger some fears and some very negative feelings. But at the end of the day, okay, in the Canadian context, it was a very good discussion. I think it created a lot of good, a common goal for the country, and I think in 20 years and 30 years from now, I'm convinced it's going to be one of the key building blocks of our country.
Thank you. I'd like to pose a quite specific question now, straight away, about we have in Kittilä mine there is this community liaison committee. And that's, I think, the only one in Finland. We don't have that kind of in other mines. Something similar, but not exactly that kind of. But then in Canada, there are these impact and benefit agreements and community and development agreements. And in Sodankylä here in Finland, I know they have been trying to establish that kind of agreement, which goes maybe deeper into the benefit for locals and local area. So how do you see this? It's only in relation to indigenous populations, but in Finland they are locals but not indigenous. So is it possible kind of to apply that kind of agreement in other situations than indigenous?
That's a good question, actually. Obviously, the so-called impact benefit agreement, it's a framework that has been created by the government at the essentially. So it provides, even though these agreements are quite complex and it takes a lot of time to negotiate. Actually, I was showing that on my slide. Probably one of the issue that took the most time to negotiate is precisely this. But for communities that are non-indigenous, okay, the framework is less clear, okay. We need to engage in consultation, and I think there's less clarity on that, and maybe it's something that is probably the next frontier, but I don't know if it answers your question. Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah, I understand that it's a very complex process.
But there's I would say for these agreements, there's less clarity for in Canada. I'm talking about for non-indigenous communities.
Yeah.
And we're getting to have these agreements more and more.
Yeah, it's obvious in Sodankylä case that it's not easy because there is no model for that or no previous attempts. But if you, Hannele, want to continue.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with Anne, what you said in your statement that reconciliation is not really a solution for everything. It's a good tool how to work in real openness with various stakeholders and local people and this actor, this new operator who is coming to region. But what I have been thinking quite a long time is that what is this authority, or who is this who decides who gets the priority If there is a conflict, there is so different need to use the land that there is no possibilities to get sort of reconciliation. This environmental impact assessment is a good tool in that purpose, that local people and everybody can really heard what is now the question, what is happening, what kind of an impact to environment. But it's only, as it said, environmental impact assessment. And if I look our legislation, we have now been talking about these voluntary basis actions, like Metsähallitus has its processes, which Kirsi-Maria Korhonen told us, and what I have been telling you about this network for sustainable mining. But what is in our legislation, quite powerful operator is the local municipality, because it has this, it is the planning authority in Finland. And especially looking our Mining Act, which was adopted 2011, this our new Mining Act, the local municipality has a real great power if he wants to use it, the local council, because it can say no, yes or no to new mine if it decides so, and in some cases it has also decided. So if it denied to make this detailed plan to these new purposes, but how actively county who make this regional plan and the local municipalities use this power, that is the different thing. But this is the only which I have seen in our legislation. Of course, the Sami Parliament has this power by the law that everybody must negotiate with them, but that's only to negotiate. I am a lawyer, so I look the legislation. And if I very briefly answer to you, Anne, you mentioned this state land use guidelines, which are being for a while under preparation and are going to government for decision process. I think that the purpose was in this working group who made these guidelines to shorten the list. There was 86, I think, 86 detailed sentences what the government want for land use planning, and it's too much, and now they try to shorten. But we have started in the Ministry of Environment quite large review related our Land and Planning Act, and I think that the next election period, the whole legislation will get a new form, more modern form. So these planning stages can also change. I think so. But at the moment we have a scientist group who is working and thinking what we need in future in Finland in planning or authorities and planning activities. But coming to the point, how to make the how to prioritize the different land use purposes. In Lapland especially, we have this Venus country and green belt, and there are the most important nature protecting areas, the most important recreation centers, and most important mining areas. Try to put them together. It does not always happen so.
Okay, thank you. And Pamela, do you want to say something from the point of view of social license to operate? It's not really a license in that sense that if you don't get it, what do you do as a mining company, and who gives that license?
Yeah, thank you. I don't really want to address it from the point of social license to operate. And I have 3 points. So one, as an American coming from a country who's had a long history of needing to reconcile with different groups, I think there's a land ownership issue that should be discussed. And as far as I'm aware, it's not really. 2, there are existing tools elsewhere that can at least be used in the interim until these bigger issues are decided. 1 are voluntary impact benefit agreements. There are agreements that are codified within the Endangered Species Act in the United States that are required. You've got mitigation banking, you have biodiversity offsets, you have all sorts of things that can be tailored in different ways. And the last point is on cumulative impact assessment. The government of Alberta, I'm pretty sure, has led this initiative to have regional cumulative impact assessments that do not just look at a small area, but look at even not the province as a whole, but a very, very wide region. The first regional cumulative impact assessment was led by Indigenous peoples. And so I think it's one way of giving concrete control over government processes. And I think that's another potential solution.
Yeah, I think in our environmental impact assessment there is this demand for cumulative assessment as well, but I don't know if it's always applied so well. So, Anne, do you want to comment on the comments?
Well, about that cumulative impacts assessment, how the cumulative impacts are seen is quite different from the perspective of reindeer herders than the perspective from governmental actors. And for us, it's really everything that counts. And for example, forestry is rarely taken any way into account of any assessments. It's just taken as a natural thing that happens, but it affects us very, very strongly. And the problem with these assessments is also that there is a lot of going on in our pasturelands. There is mining industry, there is windmill projects, there is peat production, there is tourist centers and forestry and million things going on, and they all have their own assessment processes going on, which are taking a lot of time. Then there is this point of political power. So there is people who are active in municipal politics and national politics, and we simply do have not enough time to take part of all of these processes because we have to herd our reindeer. So who is taking our side in these processes? Who is taking care of us? No one.
Thank you. I can recognize the same problem within the tourism industry because they are small enterprises often and they don't have time to participate and they don't have any lobbying organization in that sense that it's very difficult to get them into the table and also this assessments they are not applied to all these small construction things and so on, so it's really maybe a problem. So are there any questions or comments on the audience? Yeah, there will be a microphone, I suppose. There. Okay. Long way.
First of all, thank you very much so far for the very interesting discussion. I'm Mia Landara. I'm from the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, and I have two comments. The first one refers to Hannele Pokka's discussion or talk about the law, the legislative framework for all of this. And this is in a way a question, but I'm not expecting you to answer it because it's rather difficult. But for example, in the Reindeer Husbandry, Reindeer Herding Act or regulation, it says about these significant impacts on herding. And also in the environmental impact assessment law, they talk about significant impacts on environment. And I wonder in the case of reindeer herding, who should be the one to define what does this significant means? Because so far it seems to come from, it doesn't seem to come from the herders themselves, who actually know, I think they know the best what such significant impacts could be. So I wonder if there's a need to reconsider these laws, this legislative framework for land use in Finland in the case of reindeer husbandry. And the second question or comment is to Anne about this reconciliation or also participation, like we talked about the environmental impact assessment. And I can really clearly see here different perceptions how participation is seen among different stakeholders. And I wonder, I mean, of course, everything that includes participation at some level is good, and we talk about social acceptance, social license, but I wonder if it has a point if the participant, the reindeer herder, the voice is not taken into account in decision making. So these are my two comments, and maybe Hannele, you can start. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question.
So I can start in that part, that if it's question about, for example, mining or some other industrial activities, then normally the operator need a lot of licenses given by authorities, so environmental and water permits and of course mining permit. But if it's question about cutting trees, so forestry, it's the different situation. There the system is not similar. And if I come to this environmental permission, which is concluded, this environmental impact assessment, which is needed in Finland when there is that sort of investment or that kind of a project, that this significant environmental impact is foreseen, or if the regional authority decides that this environmental impact assessment is needed. So it's part of this permitting process. And our legislation begins that this person or this company who want to begin activities in the region, this company must be aware of these environmental impacts, how harmful, how big they are, and the final decision maker is this permitting authority. And normally the permit which is given by this authority, which here in northern Finland is this authority located in the city of Oulu. It's not a decision yes or no. There is a lot of these conditions how to diminish these harmful environmental impacts. And as we have seen, these authorities are not gods. They are not able to see everything what is coming in future. And the bad thing is that also this company or this actor is not always so aware what kind of environmental impacts are coming with this project. So very seldom we have had a decision from permit authorities that it's clear no. It's something that yes, but you must do a sort of activities to diminish this bad environmental impacts. And I have never seen a big industrial investment which have nothing with environmental impacts. Something happens, and it depends what is put in the permit.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Guy wants to comment this as well.
I would like to comment on the Reindeer Herding Act and the significant impact. In earlier times we tried to find what all can be done, and it's not still significant. and then we It was in 2002, the first time we made the agreement with the Reindeer Herders Association and later with Sami Parliament to define the issues that are important to reindeer herders. And now it's very detailed, and we have been thinking that it's better find a solution also in small things and not try to find the limits of the law. So.
Okay, thank you. I know that there has been trials to do research on this significant harm, but they have not actually, I suppose they haven't been performed, but yeah, interesting question. Anni.
Yes, thanks. I would like to say something about that definition of significance. There has been some discussions and cases where it has been defined whether or not some damage done for reindeer herding is significant or not. And it looks like that we don't have much to say about that issue. It's other people who decide what is significant for us and for reindeer. So that's not a very useful tool for us. The same goes with the social license. We can't decide if we will give a social license or not. It's not in our hands. Sometimes the authorities have stated that the project or a company have to compensate the damage to reindeer, what they're causing. But no one is asking if we want money or if we want to prevent the damage in the first case. So we don't have so much possibilities to act with this. The problem is the legislation, of course, and the Reindeer Herding Act should be renovated in a way that it takes better us into account. But we are still afraid of that renovation of Reindeer Herding Act because we are really very scared that the conclusion will be that we lose the rest of our rights. We are afraid that we lose the right of free ranging, that the solution will be in this country that hey, if there is a problem, let's end the reindeer herding. So that's why we are not pushing either this legislative process.
Thank you. Thank you.
I could add to this discussion which Anne started, that if I look at our legislation in Finland, everything which concerns protected areas, and especially European Union's protected areas network Natura 2000, there is a very special procedure how to do when there happened that there is possible significant influence to this protected area. Then you must be a special environmental impact assessment to this network, and there are very certain criteria how to search what happened. But between this different used to get living like reindeer management and others or tourism activities, there are not the similar systems, and I understand that it is much more difficult, but protected areas that we really do, as we all know. If somebody is trying to do something in Lapland, there is always Natura 2000 area quite near, and you must be this evaluation, what kind of influence is this cutting trees or something concerns to this area. And I am not demanding that the similar system must be in everywhere. It is quite complex and hard, but this is how we work.
Okay, Pamela.
Just a quick point. One of the conversations around social license to operate in Canada is, do they incorporate social license to operate definition, practices, associated contracts directly into legislation? So there's something that it's just required. And I think that's just another example of a tool that can be used to help with these issues if it's actually in the legislation itself.
So I would like to little continue about this social license to operate. This is This is not based on law. This is, if I look it from the local side, it's acceptance. And to the company or operator, it's a part of this good governance. But when I first time visited Canada, Yukon province, and heard that there is 1 person per 7 square kilometer living in Canada, and I come to Lapland, I stopped to speak that this is a sparsely populated area. This is density. and what does it mean to new operator who want to come and begin operate which need a lot of environment or surroundings here? This is not really not an empty area, this Lapland. There is always somebody who cares, who is coming to his or her neighbor. He can be a reindeer man, or he can be a tourist entrepreneur, or he can be a person who has a leisure cottage here, or he is a hunter or fisherman or somebody. And Finland is, as we all know, a very high educated country, and in every local village, whatever remote it is, there is a very educated person, or he has a good relatives in the near city, and that means that they are very aware and want to be very aware what is happening, and they have time and will to look. What does it mean that this kind of operator is coming to my neighborhood? And the third point which I want to mention is that this social network is a special tool to these kind of activities, especially if you want to say no to some project. And what is the consequences for all these 3 things? Lapland is not empty. We are quite highly educated people here in Finland, and we have social network. It means that if somebody wants to come here, he really must be open and try to get in open modes this social license to operate here.
Okay, thank you. I agree that this social acceptance might be a more just concept instead of this license, but that's only my opinion. But Michelle, you want to say something from Canadian perspective?
Yeah, no, I just want to comment on what you said about Yukon, because I think we should not believe that population density is a factor. I think it's land access is difficult everywhere, okay? And it doesn't matter if it's a denser or less denser. I mean, and also everywhere, like, people have very unique relation with the land, and we have to adjust with that.
Yeah. So if there is a question in the audience, we could take one more.
Silent.
Yes, if not, then I'd like to ask you a question of all of you. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Hello everybody, my name is Anna Kantala and I work for the Sodankylä municipality, which was mentioned in this discussion. And thank you for your speeches, and I think we really in Finland, we have something to learn from Canada and North America, and also maybe in the mining context also from the forestry and the negotiation and agreement processes we have already here in Finland. I think that maybe we should invite a special meeting about this agreement development in Lapland, that what kind of agreement processes we could have related to mining and local communities here in Finland, and what it could be in future. As the representative from the Agnico Eagle told that might be in the future also related to other than, also in addition, more than indigenous people, like also the other local communities, to solve the issues that come up when the mining projects are implemented. And please, if here are researchers or professionals related to community agreements or impact benefit agreements, please contact me after this meeting. So I'm interested to discuss with you.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, just want to maybe to say this is what I said is the next frontier. I think at the end of eventually there will have to be agreements, okay, with communities, and I look at one of our operation. It's Canadian Malartic. We're co-owning it with Yamana. We're two companies, and we develop a plan to so the community has some that compensate the nuisance that the activities are causing. So I think these things are happening, and I think in the future I'm convinced these will be a reality that we'll all be facing everywhere.
So thank you, Anna. Anna, you are the main person processing this Sodankylä new system. I have followed it. It has been not very easy, but very interesting. So we are looking your steps.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. And Pamela?
A quick comment. We talk about all of these different processes and social license to operate and community acceptance. And one of the things that is not mentioned is that leadership is key, that villagers have educated people and a representative, and different communities have different representatives. Companies have people who are exceptionally good at stakeholder outreach and engagement. And I think that the need actually for individuals to really contribute to this is important and to be recognized. So.
Okay, thanks. I think there are many issues like local knowledge, which is very interesting, and this role of community, which I find it's very different in North America than here in Finland. Somehow the speech of communities, it differs quite a lot. But yeah, I think we don't have time for that. But what I'd like you to comment at the end of this discussion as a summary, how do you see the future of this reconciliation, and what will be the most challenging issues and how they will be tackled? Very briefly. Very easy question. So Pamela, if you could start and go around like this.
In terms of social license to operate, this is a really tricky question. If I'm just looking at the Nordics, I think that this concept will continue to evolve, and I think it will adopt features. I mean, like Anna was saying, she's interested in learning what's going on, and perhaps Sodankylä will be the first model for this. And so I think that it will develop from just community acceptance to actually, having contractual agreements, but to this idea of co-management of resources, and in a sense the Aquacon guidelines I think are touching on this as well, that it's not just enough to have community engagement, but you actually need to make decisions together, and I think I see that happening in the Nordics. I'm actually not so sure about the future of America in general, I'm not sure, but Canada, yeah, I mean, you've already come so far from it. I guess the current conversation about should SLO be required that's going to be the next step. And I don't know if it will be incorporated into legislation, into EIA, for example.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Ki?
Came to my mind when here earlier that there is not such a word in Finnish language as wilderness. It's translated to erämaa, and it means totally different thing. It's the hunting and fishing areas of somebody. So what I try to say is that every place where we practice forestry, it's somebody's hunting and fishing areas, somebody's reindeer herding areas, somebody's tourism areas and recreation and so on. So it's always important to try to hear the issues that are most important to each of the other parties, but it's never easy to combine everything.
Thank you. Anne.
Well, I would like to challenge the use of these concepts, the basics of these concepts of social license, agreement and reconciliation. Now we can choose what is the least bad for us, but we don't have anything to say about if, for example, if some project is coming to our lands or not. And I think that we should challenge these concepts because they are used in a wrong way. They are used to hide the real impacts. They are used to make things look nice. And that's not good enough. We have to be able to do better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I would project myself in the future, like I think I would like to see is that collectively we evolve when we prepare these EIAs. Like I think EIAs are becoming commodities, okay? And this image of having this wood palette with piles of report that arrive at the regulator, I've seen it, I'm sure other people have seen it. I think this is these EIAs are an opportunity for dialogue and to address the key issues. And I think we're kind of we're trying to do too much. So I think we need, like, if I had to aspire at something, is to make EIAs a bit more humane. Okay. I don't know how it can be done because it's a highly regulated document, but this is one thing I think that would probably help to facilitate these conversations.
Yeah, thank you. I very much agree because I think that the decision makers, for example, they read only the summary of the EIAs because they are like 100,000 pages. So they should be maybe more kind of active tool in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hannele.
First, I wish that in coming years, so very soon, all these indicators and criteria for sustainable mining are in use in all mines, so in all mining companies and also prospecting operators in Finland. Because if this is in use, it gives more openness and hopefully more trust to local people and other operators what these companies are doing. We have enough knowledge what is going on. And secondly, I wish that, for example, here in Lapland, the regional county organization and doing their regional plans and local municipalities doing their detailed own plans, they use their power and really have discussions how they want to develop the whole province and their own local municipality. Have they some priorities, and if they have, put them to the plans, because it helps to this decision-making processes which comes later. Because the third point is that tourism activities are increasing, reindeer management will stay in Lapland, and also the minerals, if we are really moving from fossil fuels to renewables, the demand does not stop, it will increase. Thank you.
Thank you. all very much of this good conversation. I think it wasn't so conflictual that I was afraid of. So I think although we were a lot discussing about mining, but I think this applies to all of these land use issues, very much about this trust and need to have this dialogue and to develop the means for that and methods. So maybe this was not the solution for that, but maybe something to think about, and there were even some concrete suggestions like Anna had about this agreement issue. So thank you for the audience of listening and participating, and thank you for the speakers.
Thank you, Sarah.